Thank you very much. Maybe we are ending this round table. Maybe a few words of conclusion for each other, if you want. I think it was very interesting to listen to you, and it was very interesting to listen that there are, for evolution of green bonds, the idea, for instance, of a hard taxonomy, and the idea to say, will it be a solution, for instance, to increase the market of issuer, because it seems that it is a major challenge that we have to face tomorrow. So maybe Mrs. Sorry for the micro, Mrs. Panomarenko, if you want to have a little conclusion about that, and what is your position of your institution on this idea?
I mean, looking ahead, and the position of the institution, such institution as IFC and the World Bank, I mean, we continue to be committed to issuing green, to channel the interest of fixed income investors into financing climate-friendly projects, to pick up the conversation with regards to other labels as social and sustainable. I see is also an issue of social bonds. And what I would like actually to do is to leave you with a question. If it is a green project, if it fits all the criteria, but it leaves some kind of social damage, is it still green? So in my mind, green, to your original question, is it wide of a concept? It's actually yes and no. It depends. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Romani,
so
last word.
I don't know what will eventually come as a recommendation from the HLEG and what steps the Commission will effectively take, but I would like to clarify what we have proposed as a core idea. Our proposition has been there are different definitions of green, different ways to do this. The Commission will have its own vision, but it is important, it is even important than that. It is important to endorse a universal taxonomy that covers, in principle, all definitions of green. So a common language that can be used by each standard to clarify what exactly the standard means and what the objectives of that standard are. Because this is the only way to provide guidance to market by proposing different alternatives to investors that can then pick what they think is most relevant. So one single terminology that permits effectively multiple standards to live together, but in a comparable manner, so as to provide people with the opportunity to clarify their own preferences, be it on issuer or investor or any other actor's side. I think this is extremely important. It's also important to underline the dynamic that is involved, because if you take the core concept of a green bond is that it is an instrument by which you can put already on a tangible footing today what you already do well, by classifying it properly, by measuring and proposing a measure for its contribution to a policy objective, but then also to indicate what the way forward will be. And this is a dynamic process that involves indeed the definition of what is to be striven for in the first place, because only then you have this concept of additionality on a real tangible footing. And I think this is a very second important idea that we need to throw into the discussion.
And it's interesting too for the academic world, because it's also a challenge for the academic world to help for this kind of taxonomy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Maybe a question would be, will be borrower really rewarded by the market tomorrow, do you think, for EDF to be it would be a sort of conclusion maybe for EDF to say the solution maybe is that the market will really reward the borrower when they are using the green approach.
No, today the borrower not really reward.
No, not enough. Yeah.
Not enough, yeah, of course. But just to conclude, we can say that as far as the EDF is concerned, we have to face a significant growth over the next years to reach the goals EDF has fixed in the future, and of course green bonds are welcome to finance these investments. And just to keep in mind that green bonds represent a third in our debt position at the end of the year. So
it's huge.
Green bonds are welcome.
Thank you very much. Frédéric.
Conclusion remarks. Optimistic. The size of the investors that are one way or the other interested into climate change represents about $100 trillion. How do we know that? We know that because of the size of the investors that are behind carbon disclosure projects, CDP, that they get the carbon footprint of corporate. So they signed, and they represent $100 trillion. It's a very big number. So to put it in perspective, we can say that 0.1% of $100 trillion is $100 billion. So it means that each time we convince investors to switch from I'm interested into climate change towards I'm reallocating my portfolios towards a low carbon economy, so 0.1% represents $100 billion. And it says a lot. It says why Emmanuel Macron said on Tuesday it's all about finance. Because actually when we are mobilizing capital markets, yes, it can represent massive amounts of money, well beyond what governments actually are doing. And so yes, now we have a wave, whatever, tsunami, whatever, that is coming and that can really shift the entire economy. So that's very, very good news. After that, we will invent the instruments.
Thank you very much. So Frédéric, what is your...
Well, I mean, our view as a bank, again, I think is very optimistic, I have to say. Obviously, to make it quite simple, based also on the combination of world economic growth, which is number one, and two, the very strong policy making and the policy impetus, to put it this way, towards the sustainable world and the green bond in particular. When I look at the demand that we have internally, really, the people dedicated to the green and to the green financing on one hand, and to the number of new issuers that we've just brought this year and that obviously are looking to be helped and seeking to have this green label, and also given the appetite from the investors when we see that it's below 1% of the outstanding bond, and the number of tools, financial tools that I mentioned previously, with the high yield, with the hybrids and so forth, it's frankly, I think this market is going to be exponential.
That's great. So, of course, the stock markets is quite interesting to get this kind of new.
Indeed. A wishful thought is I would like to see maybe a move from the obligation that issuers have of transparency as information to ultimately an obligation of performance. So I think the shift that is just starting the whole market debates from ex-ante reporting to post-issuance reporting and impact reporting is fundamental. We will not get there overnight. We will have to count on the work of academics and the business society altogether. But I think, as for the taxonomy, it will be important to keep a bottom line, not to over-complexify an environment which is already very technical, and make sure that KPIs or methodologies remain will continue to converge and remain material to what an issuer will want to show to the investors in terms of impact. And another point, I think on the taxonomy work, there is a lot that is being done on areas that are relatively well known, like renewable energy, energy efficiency, and transport-related project. Maybe the focus could move to consider other areas that have a potential, but that are much less explored for the time being, like circular economy and agriculture, land use, in a way that we know how effective resources that are being employed are ultimately in the whole overall sustainability remit. So let's try to find a bottom line that is sufficient and sufficiently appreciated by the market, and not forget that there's different ways to contribute to the overall sustainability objectives.
Very interesting, in online with our research. Thank you. So maybe.
Yes, very briefly. I think behind the challenge of developing the green bond market, there is also the challenge of greening the economy. And if we manage to, develop new green markets again with profitable projects available for investors, I'm sure that investors will rush into this new market. So, the challenge is much bigger than just developing the green bond market, and that's why we need to have, I think, clear and visible political strategy at national level, especially.
Thank you very much. So, Carol, the gate is open for green bonds issuance.
Okay. So for cooperatives, I think, and for farmers, we will need to disseminate pedagogy. What does it mean, green bonds? What does it mean, green finance? Because we know the word, the adjective green, but after finance, people can be afraid of. But we like jumping over obstacles, so we will do it.
Thank you very much. I think it could be a very good conclusion for everybody today. So we've got to thank a lot all the participants of this big round table, very interesting for us. I think for all participants of this one-day research day, because it's interesting for the academics, interesting also for, I think, professional in the financial industry. So thank you very much.